Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charger 360, telling the stories of the University of New Haven. J.W. Stewart along with Bruce Barber. Bruce, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well, J-Dub, because, not to brag, this is my booking.
Yep.
100%.
It is.
Claire Glynn is with us. We have got one of the rock star faculty members here at the University of New Haven today.
Yeah, we're glad Claire is here. Welcome to Charger 360.
Thank you.
Claire is a forensic scientist, cold case investigator, and the director of the Graduate Certificate in Forensic Investigative Genetic Genealogy, or FIGG, as you call it. We'll get into that in a minute. But to your point, Bruce has been trying to get Claire to come on the show for months, but you are everywhere except here in West Haven.
Exactly.
You might as well try to get Springsteen.
We'd have an easier time.
It's incredible. Wow.
Lots of travel involved in this work.
But you really, I mean, you're famous now because of this work you've been doing.
Infamous.
Infamous. Yeah, so we should get to that, but should we start with her path to the University
I think
of New
so.
Haven, as we like to
It doesn't
do?
sound like she's from West Haven. I could be wrong.
Yeah, maybe that's a little West Haven lilt, as we call it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I came to the University of New Haven 10 years ago. I can't believe it's been a decade already. And I came in 2014. And whenever I first even saw the job advertisement, it was on the American Academy of Forensic Sciences website. I had been wrapping up my PhD at that point. I'd previously been a forensic scientist in the United Kingdom for several years prior to my PhD. And so I really wanted to get back into the world of forensics. And the world was my oyster. So I said I can go anywhere in the world. Whenever I saw a job opening at the world famous Henry C. Lee College of Criminal Justice and Forensic Sciences, I was like, sure, I'll submit my CV and they probably won't even ever call me or anything. And 2 hours later, they're like, when can you come for interview? And then I came over and was interviewed, and I was just wowed by this campus. I was wowed by the faculty, by the dean, by the provost, the president, and of course, Dr. Henry Lee himself. And I was just so kind of in awe of this American university. It was so different for me. And seeing all the students walking around with their Charger hoodies on and the campus, pride that everyone has. And I said, okay, I'm going to take this job, and if I don't like it, I'll leave in a year, and I'll go elsewhere in the world. The world's my oyster. And 10 years later, I'm still here, so I must really like it.
She found a pearl.
Oh, very nice.
Yes, thank you. Tip your waitress, ladies and germs. I'm here all week. So explain to us, what is forensic genealogy?
So with Forensic Investigative Genetic Genealogy, or FIGG as we call it now, it's had a few different names over recent years. It's an incredibly new, novel, and very powerful tool that was only introduced into criminal investigations and forensic investigations about 6 years ago, in 2018. So I'm sure both of you have heard of the Golden State Killer, Joseph DeAngelo Jr., who committed numerous crimes, known for at least 13 homicides between the 1970s and 80s in California, and also burglarizing over 150 homes, lots of sexual assaults as well. And in 2018, on April 25th, 2018, which is National DNA Day, it was announced in a press release from Sacramento County District Attorney's Office that they had finally identified who the Golden State Killer was, and they had arrested him, and he was still alive. So this man had evaded capture for 43 years.
Wow.
And I remember reading this press release and going, how did they do this? I can't believe he's still alive as well. I thought he was dead. Otherwise, why did he stop his crimes in the mid-80s? Because he's never been connected to another crime since. And as I kept reading, it said this new advanced DNA technique. And I was like, what new advanced DNA? I'm a forensic DNA professor and expert. I should know about all the new techniques. I want to know what this is. And it was a day or two later that it came out that it was using genetic genealogy. And for me, this was literally my two worlds collided immediately, because I've been a forensic DNA expert throughout my entire career. However, I've been doing genetic genealogy as a hobby for 10, 15 years at this point. I had been using genetic genealogy in consumer DNA testing First of all, to solve my own unknown parentage question, because I was adopted, and so I had figured out who my birth father was through using consumer DNA testing and genetic genealogy. And I'd also been doing it with helping other adoptees figure out their parentage as well. And so for me, I was like, why didn't I think of this? I should have thought of this as a forensic tool. So after that announcement in 2018, basically the whole world was like, how do we do this tool? How do we use it? What is it? What are the rules? What are the policies in place? And there really were none. We had no roadmap, we had no blueprint whatsoever. And so over the last 6 years, I've been very heavily involved in creating those rules, creating policies, but also working cases with this new tool. And it's been incredibly impactful over the last 6 years, with over 1,200 cases having been solved now. I prefer to not say that a case is solved by FIGG. It's an additional tool. There's a whole lot of other things that have gone on before FIGG in those cases. So these cases have benefited. It's produced an investigative lead that has then resolved that case. With 1,200 cases, that's absolutely outstanding in just 6 years. Think of all of those victims' families, and they now have answers. And also justice, and violent perpetrators of violent crimes are put away and are facing justice because of it. So it's really, really impactful.
Can you, in terms of your storytelling here, to help all of us kind of understand this, can you tell us a story and maybe get a little more specific on how FIGG is used to find somebody, whether it's the Golden State Killer or somebody else, and how you put all the pieces together and figure it out?
So you phrase that perfectly there, because it is about pieces, right? It's like a big jigsaw puzzle, and you're basically taking pieces and putting them together to get the full picture. And I've always loved puzzles, so it really does work very well for my characteristics. So in a case, let's say we have a cold case, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. And whenever that crime occurred, the CSIs would have attended the scene, collected evidence. And over the years, right, no leads have been generated, it hasn't been resolved. And so there's no justice for that victim, but there's also a violent perpetrator out there. And so over the years, with the introduction of forensic DNA analysis as a whole, which came about in the mid to late 80s, that helped resolve a lot of cold cases as that became introduced. However, with forensic DNA analysis, what we've been using since the mid 80s, we can only get a match in the database, but if that person's already in the database. So it's a convicted offender that's in our criminal DNA database known as CODIS. And if that person hasn't already been convicted for something and they're not in that database, then we're getting no hits with that unknown DNA from that perpetrator, from that crime scene. And so the case goes cold, because we're just kind of waiting for new methods, or perhaps he or she will be convicted for another crime, and then their DNA will hit. And so all these cold cases, which there's currently 250,000 unsolved homicides in the United States. All of these cases have gone cold, and we've just kind of been waiting for something new. And that's what FIGG represents, is this very impactful new technique. So in this process, what we'll do is take the original DNA sample, that unknown DNA sample, and we sequence it. It's looking at portions of the DNA, essentially, these markers throughout a person's DNA. And it's just like those consumer DNA testing companies like Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA. It's sequencing it in the exact same way. And then you take that data and you upload that data into one of or both of the two databases we're allowed to use. So those two databases are GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. And GEDmatch is not a consumer DNA kit that you swab or spit it into a tube. It's a website where people who have tested anywhere, general members of the public with any company before, they can download their data and upload that data into GEDmatch and kind of have this cross comparison. It's great. And so once we have our DNA data that's been sequenced and we upload it into GEDmatch, What's produced is basically this match list of all these people in the database that share some amount of DNA with this unknown person or unknown perpetrator. And using that amount of DNA, it's in a centimorgan value, CMs, and using that centimorgan value and what we know of how much a third cousin would share with another third cousin, or first cousins or second cousins once removed, we'll take that information of, oh, well, Bruce Barber here is a match to our unknown person. He shares X amount of DNA with them, and Bruce Barber is predicted to be his second cousin once removed to this individual. So then I'll build Bruce Barber's family tree using public records. I'll figure out who his parents are, who his grandparents are, who his great-grandparents are, collect all the genealogical records and build those trees.
I'd like to dig into this a little bit. Listen, this has been told to me. I will reveal this. I don't know if I've ever told you this. Maybe we could figure this out. I've been told, I researched it a little bit too. I am a second cousin, 5 times removed,
Right?
Abraham Lincoln.
No way.
So, Virginia.
We're doing your DNA today.
Let's do it.
I've got a kit in the car.
Do you?
Yeah.
I love this. This is great, because here's the deal, and I looked it up. There's a guy named Virginia John Lincoln who came to the
Right.
United States,
Yeah.
to Virginia in the 1600s. He had like eight kids. One of them was my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
The line is Drake. And then over here, it was Lincoln's grandfather.
Wow. That's amazing.
It is. That's incredible.
I'm related to no
Right?
one
Yeah.
famous.
You know, I just need credit.
Yeah.
Somehow. So if you could help me with
Yeah,
that.
I will do that for
Okay,
you,
thank
for
you.
sure.
So the Golden State Killer was caught not by his own DNA, but someone else's DNA in his family?
Yeah, exactly. And I believe it was like a fourth cousin. So the other thing to kind of consider whenever people kind of will bring up, things about ethics and privacy here, the 2 databases that we're allowed to use for FIGG is GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. The reason we're allowed to use both of those is because both companies give all of their consumers the option to opt in or to opt out for law enforcement matching. So it's in the issue of consent in those processes is in the hands of the people uploading their DNA, their own DNA. And what we see in all these cases is we can't really give an average of what's the most common relationship types that we see in these matches, because we see everything. I have one particular case that's a case from Greenwich, Connecticut from the 80s at the moment that we still haven't resolved. And it's very, very low matches. So we're talking way out. And that's going to become, it has been very, very challenging to even, get any sort of lead with that. However, there's been cases where it has been a parent that has a missing child, missing child, and hearing about this new method, they've uploaded their DNA in there, and then we've made that match. So that type of case can be solved in minutes. Whereas there's some cases, because of the low matches, we might not ever be able to resolve it, but that's why I do a lot of kind of public speaking and encouraging people to upload their DNA into these 2 databases, because the higher the matches we have, the greater the strength of the tool.
Wow. And we are low on time, but I would love to, know from your perspective. So many students we're lucky. It's not luck. It's an amazing program, the Lee School. So as students are considering coming here, and maybe following in your footsteps, what would you say to those prospective students? What's a good match for kind of the type of student that you'd love to attract to the programs we have here?
Well, whenever I think of the broader perspective of our broad programs, right, of our bachelors in forensic science, masters in forensic science, bachelors in criminal justice, if you have a desire to contribute to society, if you want to, that's why I got into forensic science. It was, I want to, do public service, and I want to use my skills and my knowledge to do so. I never wanted to be a police officer, but I knew in the lab I can service the public and make the world a little bit safer, give people answers, give people justice. So if you have that kind of desire for your life, come here, do criminal justice forensic science. With regards to the FIGG program that we have, the graduate certificate in FIGG, I created that in 2020, we launched in 2021. It's a graduate certificate of 4 courses done one after each other, 12 credits. And whenever I started this, because there was no education on this anywhere, because it didn't exist, you know.
Wow.
And I was like, I can contribute greatly here. And I thought, you know, might get 10, 12 students per year. We're in the 5th cohort and we've over 400 students have gone through this program. But these aren't typical students. The average age of people in the FIGG program is actually 47.
Wow.
Are they in law enforcement, I guess?
A lot of law enforcement, forensic scientists, attorneys, but then also just other people looking for a career change or you know, wanting to volunteer in this area as well with some of the nonprofit organizations. So we're really seeing a lot of people that want to upskill and, you know, develop these new skills to implement it into their current work, but then also a lot of people that are like, I want to help. And so I want to learn, I want to take this education, and I want to help, and I want to help solve these cold cases.
Wow. So cool.
Yeah, it got to be an amazing feeling when you do solve it, too.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's usually about 4 o'clock in the morning. Digging through those
Better
trees.
you than me. Yep.
Well, Dr. Claire Glynn, the Director of the Graduate Certificate in Forensic Investigative Genetic Genealogy. Claire, thank you for being here with us on Charger 360.
No problem. Thank you for the invitation.
So great.
Yeah, absolutely. Another terrific show. And Bruce, I think we've solved the mystery, maybe, depending on your DNA, if you are related to Abraham Lincoln. If I see you walk in the next show and you got the hat on, we're going to know.
Definitely.
Yes. Yes, Claire. First the DNA test, then
Yeah.
I'm going shopping.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Where does one find one of those? Perhaps I could reach out to Slash, who would potentially
Guns N'
know.
Roses, yes. Very good.
Thank you.
For Claire, for Bruce Barber, I'm J.W. Stewart. Thanks for joining us here on Charger 360, telling the stories of the University of New Haven. See you next time, everybody.